Chapter 25, Chapter 23, The World of Dreams. Chapter 23, The World of Dreams. Power. We need more of your power. God needs more of your power. Give your heart to God. Pray to God. Praise God. Sacrifice your heart and soul to God. You will become God's power. Ryu woke up. He immediately wished he hadn't. His head was pounding like an erupting volcano, and his mouth dittoed the sensation. All four limbs were feeling dead, and his guts were in open revolt. The chatter of an amused crowd below wasn't helping. Opening his eyes, he winced at the bright tropical sunlight, then began looking around, squinting. The source of his discomfort immediately became apparent. He was lying prone across the arm of a statue in the middle of a square, set inside a fountain, which also explained the crowd.
What the hell am I doing here?
He muttered, prompting another groan from behind him. Glancing over his shoulder, he saw Bao sitting on the shoulder. A quick look overlocated the rest of the crew, all either on the statue or in the fountain below. There was another Highlander as well, wearing a blue uniform. Ryu didn't recognize him at all, and had no desire to try to at the moment.
Same thing we all are, man,
Bao grumbled.
Gotta admit, this is probably a new personal best, even for us. Speak for yourself,
Deez groaned from where she was wrapped around the statue's head.
This doesn't even come close.
Oh. Nina whispered. She had been lying flat on her face against the statue's chest, which was inclined slightly, arms and legs and wings all splayed.
My head. What happened? How much did we? You don't want to know,
Kat assured her blearily. She was dangling by her feet, which seemed to be held in one of the statue's hands.
Let's just say I'm pretty sure you pretty much doubled whatever your old record was. Why do you do this?
Spar gurgled plaintively, sounding as if it was underwater. Glancing down, Ryu saw that it was, or at least its upper body was, legs sticking out of the fountain's basin. Apparently, lack of air wasn't a problem for grass men.
Why did I do this? Does this always happen with excessive consumption of alcohol? Yeah, pretty much.
Sten grimaced, not moving from where he was lying in the same position as Ryu on the other arm.
You get used to it. Still should have known better.
Ran tried to stand up, overbalanced and fell forward back into the fountain. He had been sitting against the statue's base next to Jean and the other Highlander.
Why did we do that again? We needed it. Oh. Right. I do believe we went a bit overboard, mon amis.
Jean simply fell forward without even trying to get up.
I would offer to take us back home, but in my current state. Ah, mon Dieu. Right.
Ryu slowly nodded.
Sober up first, then go home.
He glanced down at the second Highlander.
Hey, pal. Who are you again? Sorry, but... Don't think I remember. Name's L,
he said slowly, putting a hand to his face.
You're the guys with the new town, right? Pretty sure you are. Said you didn't have a town guard yet, so you hired me as the chief of one. Or something like that. Hey.
Ryu blinked.
Don't remember that. Anybody else? I think so, yeah,
Ran said slowly.
You're the son of the Highland ambassador, right? Yeah,
L confirmed.
Head training, but that's it. No real time in the trenches. Yuke.
Sten grimaced.
Pretty sure something like that happened,
Deez muttered.
Don't ask me about the details, though. All gets hazy around when we started drinking by the pint. What's wrong with drinking by the pint?
Kat asked.
Whiskey. Oh. Crap.
Ryu put a hand to his forehead.
Okay, if we agreed. You get the job. Doesn't matter if we were piss drunk. Was our own fault for doing that. Thanks, pal.
Elle looked up at him and smiled slightly. He was an androgynous-looking man, thin and willowy, but something in his eyes implied that he was far more dangerous than he looked if pushed the wrong way.
Won't let you down, mister. What was your name again?
With a massive splash, Bao fell off the statue into the fountain. It was the better part of an hour before Jean had recovered enough to warp them back to their town, Elle included. Once they were back, they all went their own ways, as there was an unspoken but unanimous agreement that they would be taking the day off to recover. Ryu, for his part, spent most of it with his head in a bucket of ice. He suspected the others had their own methods, some probably more exotic than others, but had no intentions of asking about them. The only communication that took place was exchanging the news that they would be having a meeting tomorrow, and after breakfast on that day, they all gathered there, more or less recovered.
All right, let's keep this one short and sweet,
Ryu said flatly.
First order of business. We never speak of that last job, ever again. Agreed. Agreed,
everybody except Nero replied in unison.
Ah.
The old man frowned.
Trust me, you don't want to know,
Sten assured him.
Second order of business.
Ryu glanced at Nero.
Anything come up around here we need to know about? Same old, same old.
Nero shrugged.
That second set of houses is pretty much finished. Already assigned one to that new guy. Good thinkin', get in someone to run a guard, even if it's a squad of one for now. I can't say I'm too impressed by the guy,
Sten admitted.
An ambassador's brat who never actually served, I mean. Keep in mind what kind of town this is,
Nina reminded him.
His position will probably be as a figurehead only, and with that in mind, people will simply look at him and think a Highlander knows what he's doing. I guess.
Sten grimaced.
Probably best if I avoid him, all the same. If he's been on Tunlin most of his life he won't recognize me, but... It's fine,
Ryu assured him.
Anyways. Third order of business. We've got the therapy pillow, so it's time we concluded our deal with you, Spar. Tomorrow, we're going back to the Sea of Trees, and we're gonna take care of Gondaref's mind. And hope the Demon Lord on site stays out of it until we're gone. Which brings me to my point.
He glanced at Deez.
You've been through this world of dreams shit before. What are we looking at? You remember how the old man called up the physical representation of the Queen's heart?
The sorceress reminded them.
The pillow's gonna be doing the same thing, except for Gondaref's mind instead, and I don't mean his brain. It's going to create a land out of his psyche, and it won't be a small one, either. All the ones I've seen have been about the size of the entire Isle of Tunlin, and they were normal beings. Who knows what a wise tree's mind will be like? What's a psyche?
Cat muttered.
I'll explain it later,
Nina told her.
Will there be monsters?
Rand asked.
If there's a mentat responsible for this.
Deez nodded firmly.
Definitely. They can access the world of dreams even without the therapy pillow, and scatter as many in there as they like. The monsters will be the same, though, so we can kill them the same, too. Our goal will be to cure Gondaref's amnesia,
Spar explained to her.
How exactly will we need to go about that? Never done that before.
She shrugged.
But if it's in his mind, it'll be in the world of dreams. We'll just have to find whatever looks screwed up, and figure out a way to stop it. Not my favorite way of doing things, but with this, there's nothing else to do. Mind magic sucks.
She made a face.
We had better get ready for a long haul, though. Once we're in, we won't be able to leave until the mentat's influence has been broken. Figures.
Ryu sighed.
So, a couple of weeks. At least.
She nodded.
No helping it,
he decided.
All right, let's kick back while we can. Tomorrow, we're back on the clock.
He glanced at Nero.
Anything else come up? Just a mail call,
Nero grunted, putting some letters on the table.
All came in via magic while you were out. One from Ray, one from Mina, one from Petabe, and one from Sylvia. The one from Ray sent to all of us, but I'm guessing the rest are private. Well, let's open that one up, then,
Ryu decided, doing so as Nina, Jean, and Bao took the other three. Removing the letter, he read it aloud.
Greetings, friends. I hope you're all still doing well. Not that that's likely to be necessary, you've certainly been keeping busy, haven't you? The rumors about your activities in Highland are all over the spectrum, some of them are even more ridiculous than your usual escapades, as difficult as that is to believe. My favorite was the one where you were all agents of a secret name Indian Wetworks team sent in to disrupt ties between High Fort and the church. Remind me to whack Ray one for that next time I see him,
Rand grunted to Cat, looking profoundly unamused.
Gently, of course. Ray's sort of a friend. Sort of.
Cat raised an eyebrow.
Besides, what's that got to do with anything? Regardless, I assume the demon lord in residence has been dealt with,
Ryu continued, ignoring that.
The late, unlamented General Shapukai, I suspect. I met her once during a discussion of a contract, and I can't say I'd be surprised. Unfortunately, as before, just when one problem is resolved, another rears its head. The path of corruption continues even further south of Sima. As I feared, my information suggests a demon lord may be active deep in the southeast, either in Carmen or Skanda. Either would be highly troublesome, to say the least. Chances on that being this Aruhameral jerk?
Sten asked, raising an eyebrow.
Minimal,
Nina murmured.
The Sea of Trees is north of both. Strictly speaking, it's not even on the same continent. Ray would be aware of that. So if he's right, there's 4, not counting Baruberry.
Bao put a hand to his face.
Can we catch a break? Just once. Catching a break isn't in the cards,
Dees reminded him.
That happens to other people. We're not that lucky. From what I hear, you were successful in gaining the aid of a grass man. Hopefully, I will be able to meet him or her soon.
Ryu read on, giving Spar an apologetic shrug.
I've finished my mission on the Isle of Guns, and am being reassigned to Skanda next. Hopefully, I'll be able to gain more information there. Wish me luck, and may Saint Eva guide your paths as well. Ray Braddock.
Putting it down on the table, he grimaced.
Alright, this isn't exactly comforting news, but it doesn't change our immediate plans any. We can figure out what to do about this after we help Gandaroof out. Surely Monsieur Ray would not attempt to slay a demon lord alone, no?
Jean asked, rubbing his chin.
He'd better not,
Cat growled.
Ray's good, but he's not that good. Don't think there's anybody who's that good. Well.
Rand gave Dees a look.
I know a couple guys.
The sorceress shrugged.
But they're retired. And one-on-one isn't my style. I can dish it out, but I'm not that great at taking it. Ray's not stupid.
Ryu shook his head.
And he trusts us. After we told him how the fight with Kawadara went, he's not going to get in over his head.
He started to stand, then paused, glancing at Nero.
I forgot to ask. How are the new guys settling in? They're doing okay.
Nero shrugged.
Hans is getting his goods shipped in like he said, so that's coming along nicely. Salvatore ain't here yet, but Beretta and Leamington came in while you were off in Tunlin, and they're setting up too. Hey.
Ryu glanced around at the group, and they all nodded.
Why don't we drop by there and see how they're doing before we head off? I think most of us could have some business for them.
They nodded again, and everybody stood, following him out of the building and over to the house in question, which already bore signs of remodeling. There was a back door as well, leaning open. Ryu glanced through it, assuming it would lead to the business side of the building.
Hello. Come in.
A cheerful-looking young woman called from a wall of crates as she hefted another one onto the stacks. She wore a practical-looking green dress, and her hair was short and brown. Despite her slim build, her arms held a surprising amount of muscle. The room was full of pieces of armor and weaponry on display, the latter hanging on the wall and the former on stands. Glancing over at them, she smiled in recognition.
Nina. I'd heard you were back. It's good to see the rest of you as well. I'm glad to see you're doing well,
Nina said, crossing over to give her a hug.
Is Uncle Leamington here as well? There's only one girl a voice that sweet could belong to.
A voice boomed from the door leading further into the building, and it swung open to reveal a heavily built old man, bald as an egg with a short, soot-stained white beard. He crushed both girls in an embrace of his own, grinning broadly.
Little Nina. I told you would grow up pretty, didn't I? Can't say I expected you to go into this line of work, though. I've fallen in with rough companions,
Nina joked, smiling over her shoulder at the team.
Can you ever forgive me? I'll think about it,
the old man teased her right back before releasing them and walking over to the team.
So, you're the ones who picked little Nina out of that magic school, hey?
Surveying Ryu, he smiled again and stuck out his hand.
Glad to see she's making more friends. Name's Leamington. Thanks for the house. Any friend of Nina's a friend of ours,
Ryu replied, taking the hand and wincing at the old man's crushing grip.
Especially a couple people in this line of business. Guys like us do well to know some folks like that. I assume that's why you've come here today?
Beretta asked.
We've heard from the gossip around town that you're going to be heading off on a major assignment sometime soon. You got it.
Bao nodded.
Big job over in the Sea of Trees. And some of us had our armor busted up pretty badly on a recent one, so we figured we should probably get that replaced at the least before we went in. Well, We're still just setting up, so custom jobs will have to wait,
Beretta admitted, looking them over.
But we've got a stock of plate mail from Tunlin in, it's a lot more lightweight than most plate, and just as durable as the standard. I should be able to fit most of the men, except for you, big guy.
She nodded apologetically at Rand.
Comes with the territory.
He shrugged.
Nothing I can do about it. Now hold on.
Leamington glanced at Beretta.
Speaking of Tunlin, remember that one experimental set I brought back from there? That ridiculous set of stone armor you made out of one of the golems.
Beretta snorted.
I still think that's absolutely useless. Who could even?
She paused, the light dawning in her eyes, then glanced at Rand.
Well, maybe. Yes, I suppose it would fit him. He's strong enough to carry it, too, I'd wager, and it's thick enough to provide protection. It'll slow you down like you were dunked in lead, though,
Leamington admitted honestly.
Kind of a downside, there. Speed and agility aren't exactly specialties of mine anyways.
Rand shrugged, smiling.
If you can get a full suit that'll actually fit me, you'll be the first I've ever seen. Most of my clan don't lead violent lives, so I haven't seen anybody who's bothered before. I'd be glad for it. I'll dig that out of the crates, then.
Leamington nodded.
Probably don't have anything for the women just yet, I'm afraid, but we'll work on that. Enchanted robes and cloaks aren't really our specialties, but I've got a lot of contacts, and some of them should be able to get something in better than what you've got now. I can deal with weight, just as long as it doesn't restrict freedom of movement,
Kat told them.
Guessing Nina and Dees would prefer that, though. What of helmets?
Jean asked.
I would have liked to have picked one up like Monsieur Sten's while we were in Highland, but we did not have time for such things, as it turned out. I take it that you refer to Highlander Nation helmets.
Beretta guessed.
We have some of those, but not in a wide variety of sizes, I'm afraid.
Eyeing them up, she pointed at Ryu, Jean, and Bao.
The three of you, I think. As for the rest, we do have some enchanted hoods from Tunlin. They won't be quite that effective, but they'll do better than standard. Helmets for the three of us, then, and hoods for the other 5, if that's okay with everybody.
Ryu asked, and they all nodded.
Good. Now then, on to weapons.
He brought out his claymore.
This one's actually doing pretty well for me, but if you can do better, I won't say no. Hey.
Leamington took it up, testing its weight and balance.
Not bad. We might be able to, but we don't have anything on hand. How about crossbows?
Bao asked, raising an eyebrow.
Now that, you came to the right people for.
Beretta opened up a crate and pulled a strange-looking crossbow out, handing it to him. It looked like it had the mechanisms for 2 shots side by side.
Highland twin bow. Fires twice before you need to reload it, same trigger. You might need to adjust how you sight, but it'll be worth it.
Bao took it, practiced sighting, and nodded.
I can work with this. I'll take it. How are you with daggers?
Sten asked, scratching his chin.
I'm okay on my collection, but like the boss said, if you can turn out better, I'm interested. Give us a while on that one too.
Leamington nodded at him, and then again at Jean.
Same for you. Rapiers aren't really our usual, but that doesn't mean we won't be able to. I suppose I cannot continue using the sword of my people forever,
Jean conceded.
I will be glad to see your efforts when you are finished. Let's add this onto that, too.
Kat tossed her battle staff to Beretta, who caught it nimbly.
If you've got one of these, I'll eat a gold fly. I've seen them made before, but barely ever, and bronze is the best I've been able to find. Think you could do one in steel? Interesting design,
Beretta murmured, spinning it around before testing the tiny blades on the end.
Difficult to reproduce. But possible, in time. We should be able to. Unfortunately, I doubt a new whip for me would be easy to procure,
Spar guessed.
Bet.
Leamington reached into the box again and pulled out a coiled, thorned whip, green-dyed leather by the look of it.
I stand corrected.
The grass man took it, nodding approvingly as it looked it over.
Yes, this should do perfectly. My thanks. I never did get the hang of weapons, myself.
Dees glanced at Rand.
I'll just stick with my cane, thanks. Same here.
The big man held up his hands, showing them the heavy knuckle guards.
I just hit things. And even if you had something, I doubt it'd be in my size. Give us time,
Beretta assured him.
That, we will be able to do. Even in your size. Which just leaves you, Nina. I'm afraid I'm still as unused to the physical arts as ever,
Nina murmured.
A focusing ring is about the most I can manage. Well then, try this on.
Leamington tossed her a ring adorned by a bright red ruby, carved in the shape of a leaping flame.
Should work just fine for all the elements, and it'll kick your fire spells up a notch, too. I can tell,
she murmured, looking it over before slipping it on.
My thanks. Looks like that'll do it, then.
Ryu nodded.
If you can get it all out, we'll try it on, and then we'll pay up. Keep our accounts separate, I'm pretty sure we can all afford everything. Music to my ears, young man.
Leamington chuckled, pulling open another crate. After fitting and paying, they walked next door to see how the other new place of business in town was doing. Hans had begun shipping supplies in for the general store, as he had said he would, and the group took advantage of that in their preparations for the upcoming trip. It was unlikely that they would be able to forage for food in the world of dreams like they normally did when in the field, so they stocked up, packing more rations than they normally carried. They even brought a couple of kegs. Nobody wanted to face the prospects of multiple weeks of forced sobriety. It was only late at night, after dinner and drinks, that Ryu took some time to sit down by the statue of Loden outside their house and fill the spirit of the god in on their recent adventures. He felt kind of bad about how he had been neglecting to do so recently. For several reasons. They weren't really talking as much as they had in the early days of the company, where they'd all chatted with Loden on a regular basis. It had taken them a surprisingly short amount of time to get used to the concept of a talking statue. For some reason, even the hardcore skeptics like Sten and Nina had adjusted quickly. Theoretically, he could have claimed the reason was because he didn't want any of the other townspeople seeing him talking to the ancient idol, especially the more devoutly religious ones. Kay, in particular, probably wouldn't have responded well at all. In truth, though, he knew that it had a lot more to do with when they'd met Martin. The bitter old man's opinions on the dragon god had stuck with him, despite his obvious bias. No matter how hard Ryu tried to put them out of his mind and remind himself that Loden had always been fair to him, he kept thinking of the burning hatred in Martin's eyes when he had talked about the dragon god.
It sounds like you've been having quite an interesting time, as of late,
Loden said quietly once he was done telling the tale.
The grassmen. Quite possibly the most interesting species ever to arise on this planet, and certainly one of the rarest. Young Spar is breaking new ground for his people by his participation in your activities, and I believe both they and the rest of the world will be better off for that. Let's hope so.
Ryu glanced at the statue.
Can I ask you something? Well, I guess it's kind of personal. Go right ahead,
Loden agreed.
Who still worships you?
He asked bluntly.
At first, I thought barely anybody did, but the more of the world I see, the more I wonder. The Highlander clan still do, don't they? Although I'm guessing we probably shouldn't mention that to Ray.
He paused then, frowning.
Nothing personal, but I hope Elle doesn't start doing that around here. It might cause trouble if some of the other neighbors see that. The Highlander clan tend to be pragmatic about their religious observances,
Loden assured him.
You're correct, by the way. The Grassmen do as well, along with the Forest clan. There's a reason they abandoned their towns and villages and retreated back into the woods following the rise of the Church of Saint Eva. The Fusion clan, though they're down to one family at the moment, it's a good thing they breed strong, or they'd be extinct. And then, of course, there's both the Mole and the Dragon clans. Yes, they still exist, though I'm afraid I can't provide additional detail on that. Understandable,
Ryu said after a long, frozen moment as the implications of that simple statement sank into his mind. He had always known, logically, that his mother had to have come from somewhere, but until then he had never actually thought about the possibility of more Dragon clansmen still living, isolated from the world. Speaking of the Dragon clan,
I met that wild card you told me about. Martin. He bumped my breath of fire up another level. I thought he might.
Loden sighed.
I'm sure he told you a great deal, as well. In a vague sort of way, I guess.
Ryu nodded.
Just like everybody. Which I actually appreciate, so that's fine. I think you kind of understated his opinion of you, though. I'd ask just what it was you did, but I don't think I want to know. I did what was necessary,
Loden said somberly.
And it brought me no joy to do so. If there was another way, I would have taken it, but... Well, you're right. Best not to get too far along in this line of discussion. Yeah,
Ryu agreed, uncomfortable now. He still wasn't entirely sure where he stood on the destiny bullshit angle these days, and he tried to avoid thinking about it. After another long moment, he stood up.
It's getting late. I should probably be turning in. Big day tomorrow and all. Indeed,
Loden murmured.
Sleep well, Ryu. I will see you again when you return. Later.
Ryu nodded, turning and walking into the building. Laden down with their supplies, they set off for the Sea of Trees the next day. Unsurprisingly, Rand carried the greatest portion of the packs, grumbling under his breath. Cat missed no opportunity to tease him about that. Her breath of spirit would have enabled her to carry just as much as him, but that kind of bulk being laden onto her tiny frame would have made her useless in a fight, so she had received a much lighter share, though not as much as Nina and Spar. Watching the big farmlander and the fiery Warren bicker lightly as Jean warped them directly to Gandaroof, Ryu hid a smile.
We are here again, Elder,
Spar said once they had arrived, approaching Gandaroof as it had before.
Our quest was successful.
Like the last time, the wise tree's wooden face appeared.
What? Messful? That's not even a word. What are you talking about, Spar? Ah.
Spar blinked, nonplussed.
I meant that we did it, Elder. We got the therapy pillow from Tunlin. Tunlin.
Gandaroof muttered absently.
That's that place. With the thing, ain't it? Real nice people there. You ever been to Tunlin, Spar? He's grown worse since we were last here,
Nina murmured as Spar wavered, clearly out of its depth.
Not a good sign. Not at all.
Ryu shook his head.
Let's try just showing it to him.
Rummaging in his pack, he pulled the therapy pillow out of it and handed it to Spar.
Here. Oh.
Gandaroof stared down at it before Spar could even speak.
That's the therapy pillow. You got it.
Its eyes crossed.
What did we need it for again? We'll be entering your mind, Elder,
Spar reminded it.
So that we can heal the damage caused by the Demon Lord. Oh.
Gandaroof seemed to consider this.
Will you be entering my mind, then? Yes. Okay. Let's get on with this,
Ryu said flatly, walking forward.
Dees? How exactly are we going to do it? Same way we did on Tunlin,
the sorceress explained, following him.
Put the pillow up against the tree, everybody put your hands on it, and clear your thoughts.
She paused.
Also, the landing's probably going to suck. Landing?
Rand asked, raising an eyebrow.
You'll see. Who's landing what now?
Gandaroof demanded blearily as they all crowded around its base.
Not in my forest, they aren't. Just relax, sir. Or ma'am,
Bao told it, prompting a disgusted look from Spar.
We're professionals. Professional what?
Gandaroof grumbled before falling quiet, as they all placed their hands of the pillow once more. The second time was easier than the first had been. Almost as soon as his eyes were closed, Ryu felt reality shift and waver and melt away. A moment later, he realized he was falling, and his eyes shot open again just in time to see the grassland below him before he hit it with a loud thud and a great deal of pain.
It is becoming increasingly difficult to remain optimistic about life,
he muttered to himself, face down in the dirt that had been kicked up by his landing. This, of course, prompted Bao to land on him immediately.
Sorry, buddy,
he grunted.
Didn't see you there until I was already there. You okay?
Before Ryu could respond, Cat bounced off of him, both their heads colliding.
Ow. Damn it,
she growled, landing next to them both.
I'm gonna whack Dee's one the next time I see her. You two too, hey? Are we all gonna?
She trailed off as a shadow covered them, and they all stared up in horror, too late to move out of Rand's way.
Ow.
The big man groaned. Miraculously, Ryu's head was the only part that hadn't been caught underneath him.
Guys? Where? Aw, damn. Sorry.
He grunted twice in succession as Nina and Sten both popped out of the air and flattened themselves against his back like bugs on a window.
On occasion, I truly despise physics,
the princess murmured.
I just hate everything,
Sten added.
We'd better get off before Jean hits.
Unfortunately, it seemed he was too late. The Simon Prince slammed into Rand with a heavy impact and rolled down his back like a boulder, sweeping them both off along the way.
Oh, dear,
Spar murmured, landing lightly on top of Rand's back, actually managing to do so on its feet.
This is hardly an auspicious beginning to our expedition.
It glanced back up, still calm.
Oops. Look out below.
Dees called as she crashed into it.
That's all of us,
Bao muttered from underneath Rand.
Now we just need to figure out how many bones we all broke. I'm not that heavy,
Rand told him, finally prying himself off of them.
Bet.
Cat moaned, not moving.
Hey, guys.
Sten chimed in.
Not that I'm disagreeing with all of you about any of this, but you might want to check this out. Check what out?
Ryu glanced upward, then froze. The sky was no longer blue or black or any natural color at all. It was a silver sea, rippling waves endlessly flowing upside down over their heads from horizon to horizon.
Well,
Jean commented after a moment.
That is different, yes. Hey,
Nina murmured.
Strange. Yep,
Cat agreed.
You get used to it.
Dees shrugged, looking around.
Kind of odd that we didn't land in a town, though. That's usually where we always started off. That was when used on a species that associates such places with their natural surroundings, though,
Spar pointed out, glancing at the trees around where they'd landed. They weren't quite in a forest, but the grassland was still rather heavily dotted with every kind imaginable, mixed and matched in an unnatural jumble. They were near a cliff wall, and from the sounds of it, there was a waterfall nearby.
My kind consider this to be a more comfortable environment. I guess that makes enough sense.
Ryu stood up and stretched, grimacing, as the group began spreading out to look around.
So, do we just explore until we find something, or what? If it's finding something we're after, I'm way ahead of you, Chief,
Sten said flatly.
Over here, guys. You had better see this. Now what?
Bao grumbled as they all walked over to the Highlander, who was standing before a signpost.
What the hell?
Welcome, boys and girls, it read. Welcome to the past. Tilda Uru Hameral.
Oh, great,
Rand muttered.
Well.
Nina rolled her eyes, wings lifting her back up into the air.
That's certainly not ominous at all. A thought occurs to me,
Bao growled.
If he's somewhere in the sea of trees, but none of the trees can tell Spar where, then there's only one place left, isn't there? Yeah, we really should have seen this coming.
Ryu glanced at Dees.
Chances on us walking straight into a trap. Hi.
She made a face.
And it's a Ruhameral, too. I remember him from the first Dragon War. This promises to be moderately unpleasant. Moderately unpleasant is an understatement when it comes to the nobility of infinity, mademoiselle,
Jean told her, wincing.
So I am learning,
Spar agreed.
Yeah, they're pretty nasty,
Dees admitted.
Still, there are worse things out there. I'd put them about on par with the Dark Dragon Empire's Tiamat unit. Is that supposed to be reassuring?
Sten asked skeptically.
Highland had biographies on them. There's a town over to what I believe is the west,
Nina called out, now about 20 feet up.
And a river to the east, coming down from this cliff. The grassland continues south. Alright, let's go to this town first,
Ryu decided.
We'll see if there's anything there that'll give us answers. If this demon lord wants to play, then it's too late to back out now. We'll just have to deal with it. For some reason, my tail stands on end when you say that,
Cat commented as they all began walking west.
And that's coming from me. I was about to say,
Bao commented.
Thought you were a combat junkie. Don't tell me you're actually growing up. Yeah, right.
She snorted.
Besides, this, coming from you? Anyways, it's only good when it's fun. And demon lords.
She glanced at Ryu.
Not fun,
he agreed.
About as far from fun as you can get. I would agree with that statement,
Jean murmured slowly.
However, I am unsure as to the rationale behind it. Come on, man.
Cat grinned at him.
You can't tell me you've never felt the rush. Not even once. Is this supposed to make sense?
Spar asked politely.
Nah,
Rand told it.
I figure they've both just taken too many hits to the head. I can vouch for that,
Bao muttered.
For Ryu, anyways. It would explain a lot,
Nina admitted, floating down to join them.
But then, Dees has taken just as many, I'm fairly certain, and she's not afflicted.
She paused.
Are you? Nah, brawls are fun every now and then, but so real a lot of things.
Dee shrugged.
My special interests are more exotic. Whoa, whoa, whoa.
Ryu held up a hand.
I do not need to know. Don't think any of us do,
Sten agreed, prompting a rude noise from the sorceress.
Can we change the subject?
Rand asked plaintively.
Now. There's that town, up ahead,
Kat told him as they climbed a hill.
I can see it now. Whoa.
She broke off staring, as did most of them. The town up ahead was an anomaly of reality, a series of huge stone blocks stacked on the northern edges of each other, staircases carved into their front sides. Despite that structural design, and the fact that each was roughly the same size, the bottom of each one rested on the ground in total defiance of logic. Trying to look at it all at once made Ryu's eyes water. Glancing at individual aspects was all right, but seeing the whole picture simply made him painfully aware that there was no way it could exist in reality.
Holy shit,
Bao muttered after a long moment.
Hey,
Nina murmured again.
Strange. It's like a painting I saw once.
Kat tilted her head to one side.
If you stare at one small bit of it, you can almost pretend it's not a total mind screw. This is the most illogical thing I have ever seen,
Spar said sourly.
World of dreams.
Dee shrugged.
Did you expect it to make sense? Reality is optional in here. This kind of shit happens all the time. Is that a desert underneath the back end of it?
Rand asked, glaring over at it.
It is. It's a freaking 1-mile desert. What the hell? I find the hole in the side of the sixth one up from which the endless stream of water is falling into the lake more troubling, myself,
Jean said vaguely.
I am fairly sure that is not supposed to happen that way. Well, we're not gonna get anywhere standing here staring at it,
Ryu said, starting towards the town.
Let's go see who lives there. If we're lucky, everybody there'll just be a representation of part of Gondaref's consciousness,
Dees explained.
That's what happens in most cases. What happens if we're unlucky?
Sten asked, raising an eyebrow.
Since we usually tend to be. Could be Aruhameral's the kind of sicko who thinks it's funny to throw anybody he meets in here.
The sorceress shrugged.
Moat did. Into his own head. Creeped even me out, and that's saying something. I'll bet,
Kat grunted.
Okay, here's a guy.
There was an old man standing at the bottom of the first block, next to the staircase. He looked human at first, but a closer glance showed that his dark brown skin appeared to be carved out of wood, though his hair and beard were natural enough. His face was identical to the one that had appeared on Gondaref's trunk. As they approached, he glanced blearily up at them.
Oh, there you are,
he mumbled.
This is Old Town. It's the part of my mind related to my old age. Who are you, again?
Before any of them could respond, he started to snore.
Yeah, okay,
Ryu said after a moment.
I don't think we'll be finding any monsters in here. Let's split up and see how much information we can get out of the locals.
He glanced at a door in the wall of the block with a sign above it identifying it as an inn. Frowning, there was a strange sort of wavering in the air, like ripples in a pond, that he did his best to ignore.
Meet over there in an hour, unless we find a tavern around here, which probably isn't going to happen. Somehow, I doubt Gandaroof patronized those very often,
Spar murmured in agreement as the group split off and began wandering around. Unfortunately, most of that hour turned out to be a waste of time. The rest of the old men in the town, identical to the first, all seemed to be as senile as the first, and tended to ramble about unimportant things rather than provide any useful information. Eventually, he simply gave up and walked over to the inn, only to look inside and see that it was simply a cave containing a couple of beds, much to his disgust.
Yeah, I think camping out in the open's the way to go here,
Bao muttered, looking over his shoulder.
Get anything? An extended dissertation on the juvenile form of carnivorous Simon plant life and which areas of the world said pollen can survive in after being blown there across the oceans by high winds,
Ryu said sarcastically.
I found out that what's advertised as a bank is actually an armory.
Bao grimaced.
Here come the others. Let's ask them. Wait.
Ryu held up a hand as they gathered around.
Just to save time here, let's skip the whole go-around. Does anybody have anything actually useful? Anybody?
After a long moment, Jean raised his hand. A moment later, Nina did as well.
Apparently, there is something called a memory tower, somewhere in this world,
the prince explained.
What that is, or where, I do not know, and neither did any of these gentlemen. Right.
Dee snapped her fingers.
There's always one of those, and it's always the core of the place. I should have remembered that. Man, I must be getting old. No comment,
Ryu said quickly.
Alright, memory tower, look for it. Nice thing about towers is they're fairly easy to spot. Nina. There are supposedly 2 more towns, over to the east of here,
she explained.
One representing middle age, and one for youth. The former is apparently southeast, and the latter northeast. Okay, let's go from there.
He nodded.
And by go, I mean now. This place is just weird, and I say that coming out of Tunlin less than a week ago. It is fairly disconcerting, even to me,
Spar agreed as they left town.
I believe that is all that needs to be said on the subject.
The next few days were spent on travel. They headed south first, on the assumption that said town would be easier to reach. For a while, aside from the strange sky, they were almost able to act like it was just another trip. There were monsters, of course, but those were nothing they didn't know how to deal with by now. After their 3rd day, however, something became apparent that made things even more complicated.
Hey, Rand.
Kat asked around noon, as they approached a bridge across the river, the first one they had seen. The next town was on the other side. Its rising block formation had been visible for hours now.
Are you feeling okay? We're here,
Rand reminded her.
Am I supposed to be? Well, there's that, yeah,
Sten admitted.
But I think she was referring to how you're kind of looking a little different, recently. Really?
Ryu gave the big farmlander a glance over. He seemed to be mostly the same, but his walk was a little quicker, more energetic, and his face was subtly altered.
You're right. He looks younger, just a little. Look, just because I'm an adult compared to most of you.
Rand grumbled.
Take it from me, then.
Dees raised an eyebrow.
You're losing years. What were you, 30? I'd say 25 now. Hey.
Rand examined his own arms.
I do feel a little less. Me, I guess. But why am I the only one? It is simple, Mon Ami,
Jean explained.
Relatively, you are the senior member, yes? Aside from Monsieur Nero, of course. Shame we didn't bring him along,
Kat commented.
Now I'm kinda wondering what he'd be looking like around now. I understand,
Spar said, eyes widening.
As we travel through this land, we progress backwards in age, which begins to affect us as well. None of us are elderly, so we were unaffected until this point. Rand is the oldest in relative age, so he was first. It must take into account that I am, by my clan's standards, still young. As we continue towards youth, the rest of us will begin to be affected as well. Wait, what?
Bao yelped.
We're gonna turn back into kids. That would appear to be the case,
Nina murmured.
Oh, hell no.
Sten shook his head.
Nuh-uh. No way. Not happening. Not a chance,
Rand agreed.
We might not have a choice in the matter.
Ryu grimaced.
We've gotta find that tower, and I haven't seen it so far. What I'm wondering is, why?
Bao started to say, glancing at Dees, then broke off.
You know what, never mind. Are you sure?
She asked sweetly.
Positive.
He nodded quickly.
Let us hope the tower is near the next town, then,
Spar said as they walked onto the bridge. Halfway across, they all paused, then turned and stared down over the waterfall's edge as it spilled endlessly into the same void that made up the sky.
Hey,
Nina murmured.
Strange. Right.
Ryu nodded after a while.
Nothing to see here. Move along. Agreed,
Kat and Bao both said simultaneously, and the others made noises of acknowledgement as well.
You know, I always wondered about that,
Dees commented as they continued east.
What would happen if you actually went all the way to the edges? Kind of wishing I hadn't, now. Wondered, I mean. Sometimes, you just gotta know when you don't want to know, in advance,
Sten agreed.
Okay, there's that town up ahead. Right.
Ryu nodded.
Same plan as before. Split up once we get there, ask around, meet back up in.
He thought for a moment, then looked the town over. It had the exact same layout as the old town had.
Whatever passes for an inn again. So what does that make this place?
Bao asked.
Middletown. It's as good a name as any.
Ryu shrugged, nodding at the man standing by the stairs. He was an average-looking human male, though his hair was pink, and his skin had a strange tint to it akin to sparse petals.
Hey. Welcome to Middletown.
He replied cheerfully.
If you're looking for Youngtown, it's north of here. That's the town where everybody's a kid, you know. They call it Youngtown for a reason. Kind of why they call this place Middletown, 'cause we're all in between old age and young age. Except we're not really real, we're just physical manifestations of my memory. Well, all except for Burroughs, of course, but he's in Youngtown, not Old Town. You would think he wouldn't be, since he still looks so old, wouldn't you? That a fact?
Ryu nodded politely, then paused.
Wait. Burroughs. Burroughs the Cerulean?
Nina asked quickly.
Yep, that's him.
The man continued to ramble.
You heard of him? Not too surprising. He was a world-class magician back in the day. Even knew a few mind magic tricks, which is how he managed to come here. Wasn't a full-fledged mentat, but that just makes it all the more impressive, right? Hates people, though, which is why he lives in Youngtown now. Gandaroof was his only friend, so he asked to move in to get away from everybody to a place where nobody could find him. One of those angry geniuses, you know. Right.
Ryu fought the urge to grimace.
Well, we're heading on into town now. See you around, I guess.
Ignoring the continued blathering, he just walked past him, the team at his heels.
Well, at least they're more talkative. Somehow, though, I'm slightly worried about how much actually useful information we'll get out of them. At least we know we have this Burroughs guy to fall back on if nothing else works.
Sten glanced at Nina.
You know him. Of him, certainly,
Nina agreed.
He's a legend in the field of magic. Almost up to D's level. There are entire books at the magic school devoted to his exploits. I never really paid much attention to that history crap.
D's made a face.
It kind of loses its allure when you're history yourself. I just attended to try and help remember everything I forgot while I was sleeping. I think I've got most of it down again, but there's still a few tricks.
She trailed off, shrugging.
I'll remember 'em eventually. Right now, let's try to get some information out of the locals.
Ryu rolled his eyes.
Again. And hope it goes better this time around.
Unfortunately, it turned out not to, while the once more identical men in town were much more capable of holding a sustained conversation than the elderly had been, their ability to focus on anything that was asked of them was minimal. They tended to simply ramble on about what had been going on during that period of Gondaref's life, which by the sounds of it was the First Dragon War and aftermath thereof. Ryu would have found it more interesting if he hadn't read so much about it himself just a short while ago. As it was, there was little to nothing new to him.
I guess it was relevant to our interests, but we've got more important things to worry about than free history lessons.
Bao summed it up that evening as they knocked back a round of drinks around the fire. They were about a quarter of the way through their supplies by now.
Gotta admit, I didn't expect the old guy to have been there when they assaulted Obelisk. By that point, Miria had made it abundantly clear that all the world was her enemy,
Spar explained.
My people came out of their isolation and joined the other clans of the world for the final battle once that became apparent. For most of the world, that was the first true proof that we actually existed, and were not just myths. Dark days.
Dee stared into the campfire.
That one changed the entire world in a lot of ways, and there was no going back afterwards.
Shaking her head, she looked up.
Like Bao said, we've got better things to think about. What are our plans? What choice do we have?
Ryu shrugged helplessly.
We go north. Any idea what we're gonna do about the monsters, then?
Kat pointed out.
I'm the last girl who wants to be all gloom and doom, but trying to fight them once we're all knee-high might not go so well. I got some repellent smoke pellets from the general store back there,
Sten told her.
They work pretty well at keeping monsters away. Won't be perfect, but they should help. Good thinking.
Ryu nodded.
As for the ones that come after us anyways, magic should still work. Hopefully that'll be enough.
He grimaced at Kat.
Which doesn't really help the two of us. Not much I hate more than being useless. You can say that again,
she grumbled, pulling her knees up to her face.
I'll still be able to bust heads, but my battle staff'll be out of the question. Leah. It is not so much the monsters that I am concerned about as our true purpose here,
Jean pointed out.
Should the memory tower indeed be in the north, then we will have to ascend it in those forms, yes? Fighting a demon lord in that state would not be a good thing. No,
Bao drawled.
That's where the one piece of useful information we got out of that last place comes in handy,
Ryu explained.
This magician, Burrows, who lives up north. If that guy was right, he's still an old geezer, which means he knows a way to beat the effect. We'll just have to talk him into sharing it with us when we get up there. Sounds like a plan to me,
Sten agreed.
That just leaves the issue of clothing. What we're wearing right now probably won't fit if we lose a few feet. Ah, there, I am ahead of you, monsieur.
Jean smiled.
I was able to locate a store selling such things in town, and purchase enough for all of us once the affliction sets in. The sizes will not be precisely exact, of course, but they will do in a pinch, I believe. Good thinking,
Ryu told him, and meant it, a rare case with Jean.
Sounds like we've got it all covered.
The others all agreed, and the next day, they set off along the uphill road leading to the tops of the northern cliffs. It was several more days after that before the consequences of that choice kicked them in the face all at once, when they were least expecting it.
All right, kids, rise and shine.
Dee's voice rang in Ryu's ears as he slowly stirred. She had been the last one on watch last night.
The sooner you get up, the sooner you get used to this. Get used to what?
Kat muttered, her voice sounding abnormally high-pitched.
Oh, no. Hey.
Ryu opened his eyes and blinked. The forms scattered around the fire in their bedrolls were all much smaller than he had expected.
Ah, crap.
Staring down at himself, he swore again. He was about the same age as when he had first met Bao.
All right, folks, first things first.
Dee began moving around. She was the only one unchanged.
Clothes. Change in your bedrolls, even if you're all kids, best for everybody.
She tossed a pair of shorts and an undershirt to Ryu, the same kind he and Bao had both worn when they were that age, before moving on to the others.
I should certainly hope so,
Nina murmured, sounding embarrassed. All Ryu could see of her was her head, and that her hair was much longer, unlike Kat's.
The hell is this?
The Warren complained as she saw what she had been given.
Are you kidding me? It's what we've got,
Dee told her.
Better get used to it. Ugh. This sucks,
Bao complained, rising from his bedroll in the same kind of clothes Ryu was changing into. He was the only one who looked familiar, though it had been a long time since he had been the pudgy, cheerful-looking boy Ryu had first met in Gate so long ago.
Won't even be able to use my crossbow like this. How do you think I feel?
Ryu grumbled, standing up.
What do you think's likely to happen if I try my sword right now? Something ugly, that's what. Best for all of us if we keep the physical stuff to a minimum, I think,
Sten suggested, rising as well. He was similarly clad, which probably meant all of the males would be as well. He looked more like a shrunken version of his older self than anything else, though he was smaller, his limbs were just as lanky, and his face just as wry and cynical.
Easier that way. Speak for yourself,
Kat snapped, throwing her bedroll aside, and Ryu blinked. She was actually wearing a dress, albeit a simple, fairly short blue one.
First monster I see's getting it right between the eyes.
To punctuate that statement, she picked up a nearby rock and crushed it in her grip, evidence that her breath of spirit was still just as strong even if her physical form was not.
Somebody needs to pay for this. It's not that bad,
Nina told her, wearing an identical dress. Both of them were sweet-looking little girls, ones who wouldn't have looked out of place side by side on a bench in a park back in hometown, chatting over their lunches.
I'll admit, this is a rather uncomfortable experience, but there are worse things in life than dresses. So why isn't she wearing one with us?
Kat asked crossly, gesturing at Dee's.
I wasn't gonna ask about last time, but this is just ridiculous. I'm special,
Dee's replied dryly.
All beautiful ladies are special in their own way, yes.
Jean added as he stood up, garbed like the other boys.
Ah, Mademoiselle Nina, this brings back memories, does it not? Indeed it does,
Nina agreed.
Hopefully we'll avoid fountains this time. Fountains?
Kat asked.
Long story.
Nina glanced at Jean, who coughed.
Very long. I'll bet.
Dees walked over to one of the two remaining bedrolls and poked it with her staff.
Hey, Rand. You decent yet or what? Come on, come on. Yeah.
Grumbling under his breath, Rand stood, and everybody blinked. Though he was still comparatively large, at least 6 feet tall, most of his massive musculature had shriveled down to a more compact build. That wasn't the strangest thing, though. The normally calm farmlander's face bore an even heavier scowl than Kat's.
This is total bullshit. Sooner we get back to normal, the better. Where's Spar?
On cue, a huge pink vegetable bulb, around the same size as most of them, rose from Spar's bedroll on a pair of feet covered in shoe-like red growths of root and regarded them all silently. Everybody stared back.
Hey,
Nina said eventually.
Strange. You keep saying that,
Jean pointed out.
It always is, isn't it? She's got a point,
Ryu agreed.
Hey, Spar. Guessing you can't talk right now, but you can hear us, right?
The bulb bobbed up and down in what seemed to approximate a nod.
Right.
Bao coughed.
Let's get going. Up to Youngtown. And we should probably get one of those smoke pellets out.
The remainder of the trip was surprisingly less unpleasant than Ryu had thought it would be, though their progress was somewhat hindered by their youth, as they were unable to travel the same distances as they could when older. The magical prowess of the rest of the group, at least, was unaltered, and they were able to deal with what monsters still sought them out despite the smoke without undue stress. They ate less, as well, and for obvious reasons Dees was the only one drinking alcohol, despite the complaints from some of them. The sorceress wisely chose not to rub that in. Her early jokes about their status had ceased as soon as Sten had started calling her the babysitter. Half a week later, they finally made their way into the town on top of the cliffs, on the side of the lake that poured into the waterfall near where they'd first fallen into the world of memory. Despite its proximity to the water source, the town's grass and trees looked faded, as if just coming out of a long winter and awaiting spring soon. The round little boy at the entrance was a solid, deep pink in both skin and hair, and gave them uncertain directions to the inn hole in the block when asked for burros.
So you're the ones Gandaroof brought in to help him,
an old man's voice growled as soon as they walked in. He was sitting behind a desk, using some strange device that seemed to involve producing a lit flame and then freezing it solid, despite the obvious impossibility of such a thing happening. He was short, stout, and bald, clad in an ugly yellow robe, and his unkempt beard and mustache were a dirty gray. Glaring at them from behind a set of heavy goggles, he stood up.
Can't say I'm too impressed, but that ain't your fault. We kind of noticed,
Ryu agreed dryly.
Burrows the Cerulean, I presume. Don't call me that,
he snapped.
Just Burrows. And no, I'm not going to tell you how I got that writer on my name in the first place if I hate it. Let's cut to the chase. No, I can't turn you back into adults. No, the memory tower isn't up here. And no, you. HRK.
He cut off, eyes bulging, as Dees followed them inside.
Oh, goody.
She smirked.
A fan. I can't see how this could possibly work out to our advantage,
Kat commented.
You.
Burrows sputtered.
You're Dees. That means.
He broke off again and started staring at the rest of them, particularly Ryu and Nina.
Correct,
Nina murmured, voice dry.
It's around that time again. To be fair, it's been about 1,000 years since the Second Dragon War, so it's not that hard to see coming. The world was due for it. That's some pretty heavy sarcasm, coming from you,
Sten pointed out.
It's been a long week. Got that right.
Ryu glanced up at the man, not even bothering to try to look intimidating.
What were you saying?
Burrows blinked, then shook himself like a dog.
Right. As I was saying, this wasn't a waste of time. Follow me.
He shoved through the crowd, though he carefully avoided Dees, and clomped outside. Exchanging glances, they followed him back out of the town.
You're looking for the memory tower, right? That's why you came all the way up here. That is correct, monsieur,
Jean confirmed.
The patrons of the previous two towns were, I must confess, singularly unhelpful, and we did not have high hopes for a change in that factor. See, that's where you screwed up,
Burrows grunted, continuing towards the edge of the cliff.
Not that that was your fault either. Mr. High and Mighty Craypass has been on a rampage here since the day he slipped in. So the Demon Lord is on site.
Sten scowled.
Met him. You some kind of idiot.
Burrows snorted.
He'd have ripped me apart and sewn me back together the wrong way around just to amuse himself. I know when I'm outclassed. Been staying as far away from that asshole as possible. I was wondering why you were surrounding yourself with brats,
Rand grumbled. His inexplicable bad mood had been present ever since their unwilling transformation.
Can't see why anybody'd do that willingly. Same here,
Dees cracked.
Hey.
Cat gave them both a glare.
Honestly speaking, this whole place is starting to get on my nerves.
Burrow sighed heavily.
Sounded like a great deal when I first set it up, but after a decade in here, I'm actually thinking it's not all it's cracked up to be. Sure, the world's full of idiots, but at least they're actually capable of intelligent thought, not that many of them choose to exercise it. I came here thinking I could get away from it all, but instead I just get walking memories that think they're people. Yeah, I can see how that would get old.
Ryu grimaced, remembering the conversations he had had with the locals.
Well, hey. Once we're done here, we'll be heading out. You could probably hitch a ride if you want. And are you going to give me a free house, too?
Burrow snorted derisively.
If you so desire,
Jean told him, before anybody could stop him.
We are, in fact, founding a new town, one which is open to those who are willing to live there. That a fact.
The old man gave him a long look, then nodded as they reached the edge of the cliff.
I might just take you up on that. Alright, take a look down there, where you first came in, and tell me what you see. Hey.
Ryu stared down. Even from up here, the strange wavering in the air was still visible around the town, and he suddenly realized that it hadn't been present in either of the others. As the others joined him, the distortion suddenly grew heavier, and like a fading mirage, the town melted into the air. Where it had been, a tall brown tower now stood, like the trunk of a tree stripped of branches and leaves and roots but remaining upright.
Oh, no,
Jean moaned.
You have got to be kidding me.
Cat exploded.
It was right there the whole time and we just walked right on past it? All of this was total bullshit. Technically, we walked right into it, and back out again,
Nina explained, remaining calm despite obvious irritation on her part as well.
How did that happen? World of Dreams.
Dees shrugged.
Bullshit like this is just PAR for the course. Can't say I'm surprised, even if I didn't spot it myself.
She gave Burrows an appraising look.
So, how do you know about it? Don't you know how to listen?
Burrows snapped, already gone.
I've been here for a decade now. Like I'm not going to notice when some shithead demon lord turns the memory tower into another town one day. That does it,
Rand growled.
Let's get back down there and feed this piece of shit his own ass, already. Allow me.
Burrows raised his hands, and a sudden gust of wind jerked them all off their feet. Seizing them in an invisible embrace, it carried them down the face of the cliff and deposited them on their feet near where they had first dropped. The slight crater caused by Rand's landing was still there.
Hey, thanks,
Ryu told him.
Didn't do it for you,
the old man grunted.
Sooner you fix the problem, the sooner I'm out of here, is all. Might want to get some sleep before you head in, though. The age effect kicks in when the conscious mind is out of it. I was kind of wondering about that,
Bao said flatly.
Good to know. Alright then, it's getting on towards sunset anyways.
Ryu nodded.
Tomorrow it is, then. Hey.
He watched as Spar walked over towards Aruhameral's signpost and jumped up and down before it. Walking over, he glanced at it himself, and saw that it had changed as well. Hope you enjoyed the warm-up, it now read. Now come on in and let the real show start. Tilda Aruhameral.
Yeah.
Cat walked up.
Tomorrow.
Pulling the sign out of the ground with a swift jerk, she ripped it in half as if it had been made from paper.
And then we'll show this joker what we think of his sense of humor. Dem straight.
Rand cracked his knuckles. Sweet dreams are made of this.